A population is a group of living organisms that live in the same environment or area of the same species at the same time. Now, a healthy population has a stable size, meaning the amount of growth and the amount of death kind of balance out in a steady state. Whenever there's more growth or more death than expected, a scientist wants to know why. Maybe there's not enough water, food, or resources. Maybe there's a parasite or a predator. If we can know why, we might be able to save a population from extinction. Now, it would be really hard to count every single organism. So scientists use a method called mark and recapture, where we define an area. We capture as many organisms as possible. We mark them, we release them, and then after a certain amount of time, we recapture them. If the percentage of organisms with the mark is relatively high, we can estimate the population to be relatively small. But if the amount of organisms that we recapture do not have the mark, we can estimate that the population is probably relatively large. Now, the mark and recapture method assumes certain things. One, it assumes that in the time between the original capture and the recapture, there wasn't a ton of birth or the population didn't migrate out of the defined area. Two, it assumes that the organisms that were marked are just as likely to get recaptured as the organisms that were not marked, meaning the mark or the marking process didn't make the organism more likely or less likely to be recaptured, and didn't make it less likely to reproduce or more likely to get eaten by a predator. And three, we assume that the mark is not harming the organism. A mark can be a bracelet, a tag, or a little bit of paint, and we assume it's not going to come off on its own. And of course, scientists will repeat this process multiple times. Scientists try to think of everything when they plan their experiments because the method really matters. This reminds me, in Genesis chapter 27, we see a family that was once godly, but starts doing things in an ungodly way. They trade scheming for believing. You see, Rebecca was pregnant with twin boys, and God said that the younger, Jacob, would receive the covenant blessing. The problem was the father, Isaac, wanted Esau, the older brother, to receive the blessing and planned to make it happen. When Rebecca found out about this, she took matters into her own hands. And she spied on, lied to, and tricked blind old Isaac into giving the blessing to Jacob. She even used goat skins to do it. Now, we don't need to scheme. Faith depends on God. Even when we don't understand what we see, even when we think it should happen a different way, and no matter what will happen as a result. You see, in James chapter 3, verse 17, we read, "But the wisdom from above is first of all pure. It is also peace-loving, gentle at times, and willing to yield to others. It's full of mercy and the fruit of good deeds. It shows no favoritism and is always sincere." So seekers, even if you know it's what God wants, wait for the Lord to do it in His will and in His way.